Stand on the edge of Toronto Harbor around 1700 and look north. There is no CN Tower, no glass skyline, no Union Station, no railway lands, no city called Toronto. Across the water is a low, forested shoreline broken by marshes and beaches. Canoes move through the harbor. Smoke rises from camps and settlements. Trails connect Lake Ontario to the interior. The land is already known, traveled, and used by Indigenous peoples whose presence reaches back thousands of years. Now keep watching. The British will arrive and build a military town called York. American troops will attack it. An exploding powder magazine will tear through a battlefield. York will become Toronto. Railways will arrive, and the shoreline itself will move south as the city fills parts of the lake. A storm will cut through the sandy peninsula beneath and turn it into islands. Factories, warehouses, and smokestacks will cover the waterfront. Then fire will rip through the commercial core. Toronto will rebuild. Streetcars will spread. Immigrants will reshape neighborhood after neighborhood. Canada's first subway will disappear beneath the streets. Then a concrete tower will rise so high above the railway lands that it will redefine the city. The CN Tower will become the anchor of a skyline that keeps multiplying around it. But almost everything else will. We will watch a colonial outpost become a globally connected and deeply diverse metropolitan city. This is the evolution of Toronto. The future Toronto Islands, looking north across the harbor toward downtown. But at the beginning of our story, the islands are not islands at all. They form part of a sandy peninsula curving from the mainland and protecting the harbor. The ground beneath it will eventually become separated from the city. Across the water, the shoreline will move too. Much of the modern waterfront stands on land created through generations of lake filling. Front Street, now inland, once ran near the water. Toronto will not only grow upward, it will physically build south into Lake Ontario. Long before the colonial town, this region is part of a much older network. Indigenous peoples live, hunt, fish, farm, gather, and travel around Lake Ontario. The Toronto Passage links the lake with routes toward the upper Great Lakes. Different nations use and occupy the region over time, including the Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Anishinaabe peoples, with the Mississaugas of the Credit closely connected to the area when British settlement begins. French traders established posts in the Toronto area during the 18th century. Forest presses toward the water. Wetlands dominate the Don River mouth. Then the American Revolution changes British North America. Britain needs new administrative and military centers, and one sheltered harbor suddenly becomes strategically valuable. Lieutenant Governor John Graves Simcoe arrives in 1793. He chooses the harbor for a new military and administrative settlement. Fort York begins rising west of the town site. The settlement is named York. The change looks almost insignificant: a few cleared streets, wooden houses, military buildings, docks. But York is the capital of Upper Canada, and government attracts merchants, officials, and soldiers. The town grows beside the lake. Streets are rough. Buildings are mostly timber. The settlement is vulnerable, and 20 years after its founding, war arrives directly across our frame. April 27, 1813. The War of 1812 has reached York. American ships appear on Lake Ontario. Troops land west of the town and advance toward Fort York. British troops, Canadian militia, and First Nations warriors resist, then withdraw. Before abandoning the fort, the British ignite the Grand Magazine. The explosion is enormous. A shockwave tears through the advancing American force. Debris flies across the battlefield. Hundreds are killed or wounded, including American commander Zebulon Pike. York falls. American troops occupy the town for several days and destroy or damage government and military property. Smoke hangs above the harbor. The tiny capital has been invaded before it has even become a proper city. But York survives, and the next transformation is urban. By the 1830s, York has outgrown its frontier town image. Shops line busy streets, wharves push into the harbor, churches and public buildings rise above growing neighborhoods. In 1834, the town is incorporated as the City of Toronto. Toronto has officially arrived. Its first city government immediately faces a familiar danger: fire. Much of the city is still made of wood, and its first municipal bylaw focuses on preventing and fighting fires. In 1849, a major fire destroys part of the city center. Toronto rebuilds. Then another technology arrives that changes the city faster than fire ever could: the railway. 3 years after incorporation, tension erupts. Reformers, led by William Lyon Mackenzie, challenge the colonial government and attempt to seize Toronto. Their rebellion is quickly defeated, but the city becomes the center of a struggle over who should control Upper Canada. Armed loyalists gather. Rebels move south toward the city. Rumors race through streets barely removed from York's frontier past. The uprising fails, and Mackenzie escapes to the United States. Yet the crisis leaves consequences behind. Authorities strengthen Toronto's military presence, and the political arguments surrounding responsible government do not disappear with the rebels. The city has survived invasion, fire, and now internal revolt. Toronto is only a few years old by name, but already it is learning a pattern that will continue throughout its history. Every crisis forces the city to become something different. During the 1850s, railway lines reach Toronto. Tracks, stations, warehouses, and workshops crowd the waterfront. But there is not enough land, so Toronto creates some. The city begins filling sections of Lake Ontario. The shoreline moves south. Water becomes ground. Rail yards spread across land that did not exist in York's early years. Factories follow the tracks. Coal, lumber, grain, and manufactured goods move between trains and ships. The city advances toward us. Then, nature changes our side of the harbor too. Then, a powerful storm cuts through the narrow eastern section. Water opens a permanent channel. The peninsula becomes islands. But suddenly, it is standing offshore. Behind us, the islands gradually become places for cottages, recreation, and escape from the increasingly industrial city across the water. Because Toronto is becoming louder, dirtier, busier, and much bigger. After Canadian Confederation in 1867, Toronto grows rapidly as Ontario's capital and a commercial and industrial center. Railways link it to markets across the continent. Factories produce machinery, clothing, food, and furniture. Streetcars extend urban development. Neighborhoods push farther north and west. Successive waves of migrants and immigrants add new languages and traditions. The harbor becomes increasingly industrial. Smokestacks rise behind piers and warehouses. Freight trains dominate the reclaimed waterfront. The glass skyline of the future would be almost impossible to imagine. Then, on a freezing night in 1904, the downtown sky turns orange. April 19th. A fire begins near Wellington Street. The cause is never firmly established, but flames spread rapidly through the warehouse district. Firefighters fight through smoke, wind, and intense heat. Help arrives from surrounding communities and even from Hamilton and Buffalo. By morning, a large section of Toronto's commercial core is ruined. Walls stand without roofs, streets fill with debris. Thousands of workers temporarily lose their jobs. Yet, remarkably, the fire causes no confirmed deaths. Toronto rebuilds again. Building regulations become stronger. Brick and fire-resistant construction gain importance. And the city begins replacing its 19th century silhouette with something taller. Electric streetcars move through busy streets. Automobiles multiply. Office buildings rise. Union Station becomes a monumental gateway. The Royal York Hotel appears near the waterfront and briefly dominates the skyline. but tracks still cover enormous areas between downtown and the harbor. Then, the Second World War expands Canadian industry. After 1945, the transformation becomes even faster. Veterans return, families grow, suburbs spread outward, immigration increases. Toronto is becoming metropolitan. In 1953, Metropolitan Toronto is created to coordinate services across Toronto and surrounding municipalities. The growing region needs new roads, water systems, and transit. Then, in 1954, Toronto goes underground. Canada's first subway opens beneath Yonge Street, running between Union and Eglinton. Most of this transformation is invisible. That is exactly the point. The 19th century city grew through docks and railways we could see. The modern metropolis increasingly depends on infrastructure beneath it. Subway lines expand. The Gardiner Expressway rises beside the waterfront. Suburban Toronto spreads across former farmland. But another change will define the city even more than its infrastructure. The people arriving here are changing. Post-war immigration transforms Toronto. Established communities are joined by new arrivals from the Caribbean, Europe, South Asia, East and Southeast Asia, Africa, the Middle East, and Latin America. Neighborhoods become cultural maps: Chinatown, Little Italy, Greektown, Koreatown, Portuguese and Caribbean communities. Later, major communities spread across the wider metropolitan region. Toronto's identity increasingly comes from layers of migration. Apartment towers rise, suburbs expand, commercial streets change languages. The skyline becomes taller. So tall that television and radio transmission faces a new problem. The solution will become Toronto's most famous object. February 1973. Construction begins on the railway lands. A massive concrete shaft starts climbing. Day after day, it rises above downtown. By 1974, it is already the tallest structure in Canada. Then, a giant helicopter lifts antenna sections into position. In 1975, the structure is completed. On June 26, 1976, the CN Tower opens. At 553 meters, it becomes the tallest freestanding structure on Earth at the time. For nearly 2 centuries, church spires, hotels, and office blocks competed for the skyline. Now, one needle dominates everything. It becomes Toronto's visual signature. And the tower stands on land reclaimed from the lake. The symbol of modern Toronto rises on ground earlier generations would have known as water. But the skyline is nowhere near finished. During the 1980s and 1990s, Toronto's financial skyline thickens. Glass towers rise around the banking district. In 1989, the Sky Dome opens beside the CN Tower with its retractable roof. Former industrial lands begin changing function. Warehouses become offices, cultural spaces, and housing. The waterfront shifts from an industrial edge toward a place to live and visit. Toronto expands in finance, media, technology, and culture. Immigration continues reshaping the population. The Toronto region becomes a metropolitan region shaped by international migration from every inhabited continent. Then Toronto becomes one city in a completely new way. On January 1st, 1998, Toronto, North York, Scarborough, Etobicoke, York, and East York are amalgamated into a new city of Toronto. The old municipal boundaries disappear. One government now covers an urban area earlier generations knew as separate towns, farms, and suburbs. The skyline responds to the same pressure. Population grows. Condominium towers multiply. For decades, the CN Tower stood almost alone above the harbor. Now, glass towers surround it, and Toronto starts reconsidering the waterfront that created its industrial wealth. Railways and factories once pushed Toronto away from Lake Ontario. Now, former industrial lands are remade for a different purpose: parks, housing, offices, cultural spaces, promenades, new neighborhoods. The shoreline was physically rebuilt through lake filling. Now it is being rebuilt socially. The city wants to face the water again. Forest became fort. Fort became town. Town became railway city. Railway city became industrial metropolis. And industrial metropolis became a vertical global city. Look north. The Colonial waterfront is gone. The industrial shore is gone. The skyline is now a dense wall of glass, concrete, and steel. The CN Tower still dominates, but buildings keep climbing around it. Ferries cross the same harbor canoes once traveled. Aircraft move near the island airport. Trains, subway lines, and highways carry people through a metropolitan region stretching far beyond our view. And the most remarkable transformation is not a building. In the 2021 census, almost half the population of the Toronto metropolitan area was foreign-born. The settlement, established as a British colonial capital, has become a city connected by family, culture, finance, and migration to almost every part of the world. Yet earlier Toronto still survive beneath the skyline. Fort York remains. Rail corridors still cut through downtown. The harbor still shapes the city. Our camera watched Indigenous travelers cross the harbor before Toronto existed. It watched the British build York. It watched American troops attack in 1813. It watched York become Toronto. It watched railways arrive and the city fill the lake to create land. It watched a storm turn a peninsula into islands. It watched factories transform the harbor. It watched the Great Fire of 1904 burn through the commercial core. It watched Toronto rebuild in brick, steel, and concrete. It watched streetcars spread and suburbs expand. It watched Canada's first subway disappear underground. It watched immigration reshape the city. It watched the CN Tower rise from reclaimed railway land. It watched glass towers surround it. It watched 6 municipalities become one Toronto. And it watched an industrial waterfront turn back toward people. Toronto was never built once. The land moved, the shoreline moved, the population changed, the economy changed, the architecture changed. Even our camera's connection to the mainland disappeared. Every generation inherited a different Toronto and assumed the city in front of them was normal. None of those versions was permanent. The Indigenous landscape was transformed by colonial settlement. The colonial town became an industrial city. The industrial city became a metropolitan region. The metropolitan region became a global city. And the transformation is not finished. Look at the CN Tower one final time. When it opened in 1976, it seemed impossibly futuristic beside the railway lands. Today, it stands inside a skyline that has grown around it. That may be Toronto's defining pattern. The extraordinary becomes ordinary. Then, the city builds beyond it. From canoe routes to railways, from wooden York to glass Toronto, from a colonial harbor to a global metropolis. One shoreline, one fixed view. More than 2 centuries of transformation, and a city still changing faster than its skyline can settle. Subscribe for more fixed camera journeys through the rise, destruction, and reinvention of the world's greatest cities. And tell us in the comments, which city should we watch evolve next?